so excited about this one. How many of you feel like we've got a little chaos going on in our market today? Yes? A lot of chaos, right? So we're going to talk about it today. We're going to talk about growth during chaos. And I am so excited to introduce my co-founder, Lance, as the moderator. Lance Evanson, welcome, welcome. We've got Jim Sparra, VP of Sales at Freshworks. Welcome, Jim. Thank you so much. We've got Ben Davis, CRO and President of Lendio here. Ben, welcome. And last but not least, nope, not last, we've got Tyler Jennings, creator of Reference Group. Where's Tyler? Woo! And last but not least, we've got Nick Rico, CCO of Lucid. All right, guys, give these guys a hand.
All right. Thank you again, everybody, for being here. Really appreciate everybody showing up, and we're going to dive right in so that we can try and get some time back here. Thank you, Ryan, for that amazing presentation. Real quick, if everybody could, I know Amy gave your names, but just so that we can have names to faces for the audience, please give your name, your title, and your company.
Ben Davis, Chief Revenue Officer and President at Lendio.
Tyler Jennings. Important distinction. I'm a board member, but independent, so I do that for a couple groups. And then I serve as an advisor for quite a few go-to-market teams.
Jim Sabara, VP of Sales Productivity at Freshworks.
Nick Rico, Chief Commercial Officer at Lucid Software.
We're back on. All right, as Amy mentioned, growth during chaos, how go-to-market teams and revenue operations leaders are navigating challenges and opportunities in 2025. It is a little bit of a world of chaos. And so what I wanted to start with was what chaos are you actually seeing? Talk about all the challenges that you are facing or that you are foreseeing on the roadmap for this next year. And we'll just go around the horn here. Start with you, Ben. And what are the chaos or the challenges that you're facing? Let's call them out, the things that people may be or may not be aware of. I always find that you can't solve a problem if you don't know what the problem is. So what problems are we going into?
I mean, since I'm going first, I'll take the easy ones. Obviously, macroeconomic environment, the instability there, for Lendio, that impacts us on both the supply and the demand side. We deal with a lot of shifts on the supply side of our marketplace, how lenders change their credit boxes constantly, borrower demand, just small business owner sentiment shifts pretty frequently and has over the last few years. And then just the pace of the competitive market and how AI has influenced that, just keeping up. I think those are probably two that there are very few people in this room that aren't dealing with.
Yeah, you especially deal with that on the cost of capital side and everything that's going on with Lendio and the economic environment, but you're still having a great quarter.
Yeah, we ended Q2 about 30% up over Q2 of 2024 and pacing well for a good 2025.
So after we talk about the chaos, I want to hear about how we're doing that. How are we up over and over, quarter over quarter and quarter over quarter when we're dealing with this? So
I can't really talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. And we're excited to talk about that. Excellent.
When I see, one of the things I do is I help young startups. So I'm on the very front edge of this program called Sandbox here in Utah. What I would say generally is when I look at the more mature teams, my friend runs a $1.5 billion company. And the challenge that I would say is it's hard to get big organizations to embrace AI quickly. And how are you getting them to look at all of the workflow of a day for every role inside the company, especially in sales? And like, how can I get better quicker? I have some BDRs that are that next generation of kids that I'm speaking to, and I would say they're very much embracing AI tools to get top of funnel and quicker. But there's the people who have done it this way. They don't want to be told to do it differently. So I would say at a high level, it's ability for people to accept the fact that things are moving quickly, and they embrace the change instead of trying to prevent the change from happening to them. So it's a mindset I would say is number one.
The mindset. Also in this room, there's a lot of people that are building AI companies. And there was a lot of hype and excitement that continues. But if companies are struggling to adopt the AI that is being created right now, then getting that adoption, getting those sales, seeing that growth major economic headwind for these companies if they can't get the adoption to move.
I would say they probably built it for the wrong person if they're not seeing adoption.
Great point. Jim.
So I've seen probably, this is my 6th cycle of up and down over the last 38 years, maybe even 7th cycle. And I think every time we get in these cycles, what happens is customers just take way longer to make decisions, and they're scared about what they do. And then what that translates to is you get a lot of people on the street who aren't making money, and they get real nervous. And then you got an attrition problem because they bail and go somewhere else where they think the grass is greener. It's not greener, it's just cut different, and they realize that. So part of the biggest challenge I think we face right now is making sure people do the right job in a sales cycle and take that extra mile and go and make sure they're focusing on the outcomes the customer needs and creating a value sell. Because if you don't do that, it just has a really bad downstream effect, and it just keeps fulfilling its prophecy of we're not making money, we're not doing well, and attrition kills any sales organization. It just kills them. And so that's one of the things I've seen happen over and over again, and it's happening now.
I think so.
No.
I'll take a slightly different approach. From a leadership perspective, when leading large teams, chaos can mean a lot of things. But at the end of the day, it's typically when your business isn't performing like you want it to, right? Whether that's geopolitical, Doge, market, interest rates, inflation, you name it, right? A lot of those things are out of our control, right? And so from a leadership perspective, I think an important lesson for me is just really avoiding knee-jerk pessimism. Your teams pay attention to you for the good and the bad. And at Lucid, we quickly realized there's a lot of growth still out there. Budget pressure doesn't mean no spend. It just means you have to shift from selling features and functionality to selling, like you said, Jim, value, right? When you can attach to things like efficiency and productivity and ROI and speed to market and innovation, you're no longer selling products, you're selling value. And for executives and decision makers, as long as we do that effectively, we win and we grow. So it becomes far less chaotic, and you just avoid that pessimism entirely. Now, naturally, things will slow a little bit. It is what it is, but you can execute through it. So,
I would just add there, like, what he's really saying is customer intimacy. It's like, how well do you understand your customer? How well do you understand their workflows? And can you say, we are going to enable your workflows better than you've ever had before because we know you better and we built it directly for you?
You guys are already solving these problems. We're just talking about the chaos here. This is great. When I think about some other things related to chaos and the topics you're talking about, cost of capital is up. People in this world, they're looking for VC dollars. They're looking for loans. They're looking for ways to fund their businesses as they're in heavy growth mode. They're struggling with that revenue efficiency motion. They're saying, hey, because cost of capital is up and the market is harder to be able to attract these customers, I've got to go make some kind of reduction in tools or in headcount, have my revenue efficiency happen in order for me to do this. If you had to have, say, a 20% haircut tomorrow, I just got a nice haircut yesterday, but like if you had to have a 20% haircut, high and tight, what is not going? What are you keeping around? What are you doubling down on in a world where revenue efficiency is so important right now? And then what are you, basically, what is on the bottom of the list that you're cutting off? So what are you keeping and doubling down on, and what are you cutting out of the budget?
do you want me to start this one? Yeah, do it. If you haven't faced that conversation with your CFO, kudos. You're an outlier. We've certainly faced it many times. I think Ben and I have talked about this a few times. But I think doing the peanut butter approach doesn't work. It does not work. If you have to find 20% across your business, 10%, whatever that number is, for us at Lucid, we really focus on cutting things that do not impact the customer experience. You know, Tyler, you touched on this a little bit. You know, things like sales engineering, value engineering, implementation, training, ensuring customers are set up for success out of the gates to avoid that kind of shelfware approach. We strongly avoid that. So some of the things, for example, that we cut is we noticed that, you know, a lot of events post-pandemic, attendance was way down. The ROI wasn't there. We wanted to be there, but when you actually stack that and prioritize it, it fell to the bottom of the list. And so we just really refused to impact the customer experience. We actually got closer to them, as Tyler mentioned. So that's one thing for us that's been very helpful, because we've certainly faced those budget cuts along the way.
Now, Jim, you're newer to this role. You've had amazing career and opportunities, but within your role, you focus on productivity.
Yeah, so I'm going to take it from the approach of what I absolutely unequivocally would not cut, and in fact, going to get more money for. And that's, and I'm going to say this word, and people are going to be like, oh, God, enablement. And let me just tell you why I'm saying enablement. And I'm not saying broad-based enablement. We are doubling and tripling down on making sure our first-line managers are well-equipped and well understanding of value selling and customer intimacy. And we're doing the same thing for our reps. A, we want to stop the attrition problem. B, we need to make them more effective sellers, because you have to be more effective in order to actually close and win business in this type of environment. C, the first line manager is probably the most forgotten about person in our industry. We promote our very best salespeople, and they're terrible managers because we've never equipped them to be a manager. We tell them, you're awesome at what you do, just do that more on steroids. Well, that's not a leader. And so we have to train those folks. We just forgot about doing that over the years. And when I started in my career, I started with IBM. And IBM had a 14-month training program. Now, I would never subscribe to that. You just can't do that now. But I learned, my entire career has been based on what I learned in that training program. Period, full stop. Because I've been able to apply that forever. So my goal now is to make sure people like me in the current today's roles get that same level of insight so their careers can be huge. While you're doing that, you're making people happier and everyone's being efficient, right? Because they are the leader too. I forgot who said it. Your leaders, right? People look to you when you do good and when you do bad. And those first line leaders have more impact on a company than a CEO does. I'm convinced of that, because you don't see what's going on when that happens. So we're not, I don't know, they didn't ask me to cut, and when I get that, I just delete it and hang up the phone and, sorry, I can't hear you, the cell phone's going bad. So, but then I turn around and ask for more.
Love it. The enablement side, very key. So on this point, shameless plug here, EBSTA has this amazing market report that they put out. If you haven't seen that, last year, or in the last report, what percentage, yeah, he's got one in his hand, and we're going to actually go through some of that later. Sales reps, effectiveness, what percentage of sales reps were hitting quota over the last year?
Less than a quarter of sales and sellers in the last year have hit quota, and we saw just 14% of sellers are now generating over 80% of our new logo revenue. So the delta between our top performers and the rest of our sales team is getting wider and wider.
Just thinking about what you're talking about, Jim.
And I think that kind of goes back to my thoughts here. Is like, my personal motto is there's always a better way. And so your question, like, what will you never touch? I would say everything should be on the table all of the time. If you're saying that we've done it this way, so we're always going to do it this way, I think that's just a fallacy. So when you think about only 25% of reps are on quota, you should go back and identify what are the 25% doing very well, what are the things that we need to teach, how can we iterate, and it should just be a constant state of learning and improvement. Like, nothing should be sacred. That would be my thought here.
Yeah, I just say it's critically important to have a framework to make these decisions. Like the peanut butter, like Nick said, the peanut butter approach, everybody has to cut 20%, is a horrible way to go about this, right? That you have to issue a framework. You know, for us, we look at it and we say, is it impacting revenue? Is it impacting NPS? Is it impacting throughput? And we've got a couple others that we'll look at, but there's a framework, a scoring mechanism to say, okay, whether we feed or starve that has to, like, if you don't have a framework in place to make these decisions, then peanut butter might be your best approach, but it's a horrible approach.
The best of the worst. Okay, switching gears here. So we've got all of these challenges. We've talked about the things that you would continue to invest in. Go-to-market motions have changed over the last year, over the last 2 years and beyond. It's a very different world out there. You started talking about this a little bit, but at the beginning, you were talking about your incredible quarter. What has changed? What are you doing that is making it so that you're hitting these amazing numbers?
I think it goes along with some of the things that we've already said, just getting it closer and closer and closer to our customer, right? Making sure that all decisions are made within that. How does it impact the customer's experience? We used to talk about proof of concept when we're working with our SaaS clients, and now we talk about more of proof of outcome, right? Proof of concept alone just doesn't, and proof of outcome means that you have gone in and understood the exact outcome that they're trying to deliver, and that you know how your solutions will deploy against it. So I think, again, with the places where I see us win most is the places where I can say, we are so dialed in to exactly what job to be done is present in that moment of the customer experience. That's where we win.
Amen. I will just let it go.
Amen. So as we're looking at this, we've seen the economic buyer process decision tree change drastically, at least in our business. All of a sudden, the committee isn't 3 people, it's 9. All of a sudden, that budget that was allocated for revenue operations just got pulled to a different department. The department moving budget is so fluid now. All of a sudden, you have to be proof of outcome. All of a sudden, you have to really demonstrate this impact. It's a very different high-touch engagement model. How are you doing that?
At Lucid, during the heyday, I'll call it during the pandemic period, the market was pulling the product off the shelf. And one of my teams is go-to-market strategy and operations. And we measured a lot of things. But when I look back at that, a lot of them were vanity metrics. We measured things like meetings held, demos delivered. And what we found when that tailwind kind of vanished is we had to go much deeper.
So what metrics are we talking about?
Yeah.
We've got to wrap here in
Yeah.
just a second, but what was the shift?
Yeah, from a shift standpoint, instead of meetings held, we actually focused on meetings with Director Plus. Instead of demos delivered, we focused on demos delivered to key personas. We looked at pipeline throughput. We looked at cycle times. We looked at the leading indicators that actually gave us insights into our business. And when we got tighter there, results changed.
I'll just add 2 quick things. Outcomes, you hear that a lot. There's no substitute for that. You need to be asking so what and who cares, because that's going to get you wider in the organization, because the people who care have the money. And if they're not tied to that, and you're not tied to that outcome, they're not spending anything. And then the other thing I would say is understanding the people in the account, the who's who in the zoo, right? Political maps, Infomentis maps, whatever the product of du jour is, you need to map out the people in the account. Your reps need to do that, because anyone here who's bought software, are you buying because of features and functions? Hell no. You're buying because someone said to you, hey, you have this problem. I can show you how my thing helps you solve your thing. And if I don't know who cares about that, and I haven't mapped all the people, you're dead. So you got to outcome base, and you got to know the people in the account, not just the people who will take your phone call. You got to get to the people who don't want to talk to you. That's how you get the outcome.
Awesome. Thank you. Any last comments, Tyler or Ben?
The one thing that I've just been thinking about here is for all of you who are leading teams, like, make sure you understand how everyone spends their day, what the right thing looks like, and how you make sure that you are building a culture of execution. And whatever you're not measuring, you're leaving things on the table. Like, understand your important metrics. Make sure you know what, like, I loved what was said here about, like, meetings with the right person, not just meetings generally. Like, make sure you're measuring the right things and make sure everyone knows how you're defining success. Like, I think that's the part that I would leave with everybody here.
On the what are the key metrics question, my answer often to that is just less. Like, it's less. Just look at less. And go into your meetings, and if the first third of every meeting is the dueling dashboards competition, right, you just have too much data, right? And often the best KPI is the fewest and the simplest of them. And, you know, I think one of the primary causes of CRO burnout is they become the chief spreadsheets officer, and it just sucks. So the best KPI is probably just fewer than you're looking at today.
Love it. Kill the vanity metrics, fewer KPIs, focus on what matters to the decision makers' impact. Thank you all so much for joining us. Ben, Tyler, Jim, Nick. These guys know what they're doing and have incredible businesses. Thank you so much, everybody.